Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, FPL Consult here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you guys an early Game Week 5 wildcard. Now I know Game Week 5 may not be a very popular wildcard window, but I thought why not just take a look at what a wildcard team for Game Week 5 looks like, and I'll take the opportunity as well to discuss some of the things that we've learned in Game Week 4 because a lot of things have happened, and also take a look at some players we should be targeting from Game Week 5 onwards. So hopefully you guys do enjoy this video, and if you do, please do drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. Before we jump into the video, I just want to give a massive shout out to every single one of you guys. Thank you all so much for helping the channel hit 1 million views just yesterday on the deadline stream. So we managed to do it. Thank you all so much for the support so far. I do not take it for granted, and I do hope to continue to improve my content for all of you guys watching. So if you guys are keen to follow along the journey and you're not subscribed, do scroll down a little bit and hit the subscribe button to support the channel. Alright, so let's talk a bit about some things to consider on a Game Week 5 wildcard before we take a look at the fixtures and then the draft itself. So a couple of things that would be on my mind is that firstly, it is a tricky situation or a tricky time to wildcard now in Game Week 5. And if possible, even if it means taking a hit or two, I would delay the wildcard. Now, it's simply because of the points that we're going to discuss further down as well, but also that a Game Week 5 and a Game Week 6 wildcard would look quite different. The Man City Arsenal game is going to be very tricky for us because obviously these are teams you want to target moving forward. Generally, some drafts, whenever you wildcard, would always have some Man City and Arsenal players because of how good they are, whether it's defensive assets or attacking assets. So the real question now is in Game Week 5, they are both playing each other. How many players to have from these teams? So talking about Man City specifically first, do we have Haaland or do we not have Haaland? Now, I know this question may be simple for some of you guys on a wildcard and you're thinking, just have the best asset in FPL right now, and it's Haaland. So it could be straightforward, but I do think that there will be a group of people on the Game Week 5 wildcard that will be thinking, alright, he's playing Arsenal in Game Week 5, not the easiest fixture, and then he plays Newcastle away in Game Week 6. Is there an opportunity for you to go without Haaland on a Game Week 5 wildcard and then bring him back later on in Game Week 7, for example? So I think some thought will go into this. A bit of a spoiler is that my draft that I'll be showing you guys later on does have Haaland, but I am fully aware that it's possible to work out different transfer routes to start without Haaland now in Game Week 5 and then bring him back in Game Week 7. So if that appeals to you, you can of course tweak the draft a little bit here and there, and that will leave you with a lot of money. So main thing to consider from Man City is whether you want to have Haaland or not. Now the next thing I will talk about for Arsenal is the fixture swing. So we are currently 1 week too early now in Game Week 5 for the Arsenal as well as the Brentford fixture swing. So Arsenal will be playing Man City as we've mentioned, Brentford will be playing Spurs away, but from Game Week 6 onwards, majority of the draft that you'll see, especially for Game Week 6 wildcarders, they will be heavily loaded on Arsenal as well as Brentford assets. But because of the fact that we're having Man City versus Arsenal now, I don't think we would be in a situation where we want to triple up on Arsenal immediately in Game Week 5 now. So because of that, you maybe just have to start with about 1 or 2 and then start to bring more Arsenal assets in from Game Week 6 onwards. So I guess it would be helpful to have 1 to 2 free transfers rolled over from Game Week 4 so that you can bring in more Arsenal and Brentford assets after you've wildcarded in Game Week 5, because you want to be loaded up on more of these assets come Game Week 6. So something to bear in mind. And also the last pointer that I have here is, again, I'm mentioning that the Game Week 5 team would not look ideal, and that's why I would suggest to delay it. You will see in the draft later on there are some fixtures for players that really are not the best. So I do feel like the gains for a Game Week 5 wildcard would really only come in the longer term. And I do think from Game Week 6 onwards, the fixtures start to look better for this draft. But because of the nature of a wildcard where you need to plan long haul, you just need to have these players that are good in the long term, but maybe in Game Week 5 specifically, they don't have good fixtures. So do bear that in mind. But if not, if there's other things you would consider on a Game Week 5 wildcard or that you are considering, drop it in the comments down below. I'll be keen to know. And let's take a look now at the fixture ticker. So having a look at the fixture ticker now, what I've done is I've sorted it in terms of difficulty for the next 8 game weeks. So Brentford, that's the highest up there, have the best set of fixtures over the next 8 game weeks, and then so on so forth for the other teams. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of teams in this graphic here that is relevant and we need to consider for a game week 5 wildcard. And we start with Brentford here at the top of the ticker. You see that their fixture run is really good. And from game week 6 onwards specifically, it's West Ham at home, and it carries on with a really good run after that. So I would say that the difficult fixture for them now in game week 5 is something that we have to compromise on, just based on the fact that we would want them from game week 6 onwards. Players like Mbeumo, for example. Now, I know Wissa got injured in the Manchester City versus Brentford game yesterday, so we do have to keep an eye out on Wissa. If he's not available, then maybe just Mbeumo as an attacker and maybe a defender, for example. But I do think like Brentford is a team to be reckoned with. I like the way that they performed against Man City, and I do think that from game week 6 onwards specifically, they could do quite well. So Brentford, definitely on the radar. Now, Everton is an interesting team. Now, this is because when I look at their fixtures, it's Leicester, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, and Brentford. So, really not difficult fixtures at all for them. And arguably, the more difficult ones are at home. Like Newcastle, they're playing at home. Brentford, in game week 12, they're also playing at home. So I really do think like Everton has a very good run. And Calvert-Lewin is definitely on my radar. Now, I know what a lot of people think about Calvert-Lewin, but I think looking at the way that he performed in game week 3 and game week 4, where he got quite a couple of returns, I think we need to start looking at him as an option. And also just because of his price point, he's really not expensive at all. So if in the event we want to bench him or he does not pick up form and starts to blank and you need to leave him on your bench, it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, further down the list, we also have, I'll be ignoring teams like Ipswich, Manchester United, West Ham, and Leicester because generally we don't go for players from those teams. I also wouldn't really recommend like a Mazraoui, for example, from Manchester United or Delete, even though he did very well, because I don't really back the Manchester United defense. So really, I'm looking at the next team that I'll be targeting here is Aston Villa, for example. Still decently good fixtures over the next 2. Wolves at home, Ipswich away. So in game week 5 and game week 6 is a really good run of fixtures for them. Players like Ollie Watkins could be coming back into form. You look at the way that he performed in game week 4, 2 goals for him. Of course, John Duran, if he got more consistent minutes, we can consider him. But really, I do rate him as a player. It's a really good goal that he scored. But I do think like minutes are a bit of a concern. Ollie Watkins is still the starting striker for Villa. So he's someone that I'll be looking at, especially for these set of 2 games from game week 5 and game week 6. I mean, after that, it's not too bad as well. It's Manchester United at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home. So really, you could actually keep these Aston Villa assets quite long. And I'm also looking at an Aston Villa defender, like Konza, for example, to take advantage of the kind of slightly easier defensive fixtures. Now, Spurs also just below Aston Villa, also a team to target from game week 5 onwards. It's a pretty decent run. It's Brentford at home. Yes, they have Manchester United away after that and Brighton away after that. But it's West Ham at home in game week 8, followed by Crystal Palace away, and Aston Villa at home, Ipswich at home, and Man City away. So it's a mixed bag, but I do think like Spurs as an attacking outfit, we always kind of back them. And I do think players like Dominic Solanke, for example, if you want to go there, and maybe cater for a bit of rotation for the difficult games, I think it could work as well. So Spurs also on the radar. For Crystal Palace, I do think like there's a bit of a shift in terms of our thinking because of Eze not taking the penalty for Crystal Palace over the weekend. Now, what basically happened was that Crystal Palace were awarded a penalty, and based on the latest quotes, it is that Glasner has said that there's actually really 2 penalty takers for Crystal Palace, so Eze and Mateta. And what happened basically is that they made a call on the pitch, they had a discussion, and Mateta was the one that basically said he wants to take it, and he took it in the end and scored. So I think with this in mind, I think the appeal of Eze definitely goes down quite a bit. Penalties was quite a big thing for him. So I do think like maybe Eze is not as essential on a wildcard anymore. I mean, he never was essential, but I think you want him a little bit less because of the kind of doubt on whether he would take the penalty or not. Right, so that's for Crystal Palace. For Liverpool, the last 2 teams I want to shout out, it's actually Liverpool and Man City. So for Liverpool, Bournemouth here in game week 5 is a fixture where you would want Mo Salah. So Mo Salah definitely would be included in the game week 5 wildcard despite the blank in game week 4 against Forest. And that's because he's the outright best captain this week. You look at the other fixtures, Man City's playing Arsenal, so Saka's out as a captaincy option. Haaland is also out because you don't really want to captain him against Arsenal. Then really, where else would you be looking? Cole Palmer against West Ham, but that's not ideal as well. So I do think like Mo Salah is someone you would want. Granted that after that, you can kind of start to offload him if you want to, because the fixtures after that, from game week 8 onwards, is Chelsea, Arsenal, Brighton, Villa. So not super easy fixtures for Liverpool. So I do understand if people want to kind of start with Liverpool assets, like I've also done in this draft where I have a few Liverpool assets, but the plan is also to start to offload them from game week 8 onwards when the fixtures turn. Now the last team that I want to mention is Man City. So Arsenal at home in game week 5, Newcastle away in game week 6. From game week 7 onwards, the run is incredible. It's Fulham, Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, Tottenham. All games you expect City to do well in. But this block of game week 5 and game week 6 fixtures, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, could you do without Haaland? Let me know in the comments down below. Would you be brave enough to go without Haaland a wild card? For this draft, a bit of a spoiler is that I do have Erling Haaland, but it's simply because of the fact that I think he could do well in that game week 6 fixture. So having a kind of red colouring on the fixture could be a bit misleading. I do think like Newcastle are not as strong defensively, so Haaland could definitely score in that game. So really the only game I think he could blank potentially is the Arsenal game, where historically we've seen Man City and Arsenal being a low scoring game. So that's the only one where I think he could blank. But if not, even from game week 6 onwards, I do think he would score against Newcastle. So because of the nature of that, I do think like I would still have Erling Haaland a wildcard, but I'll be keen to know, what do you think about this? And let's now take a look at the wildcard draft. So looking at an early game week 5 wildcard, this is where I'm at the moment. It's a 3-4-3 formation, and let's break down the players in this draft. So I have David Raya in goal, and I have Fabianski on the bench as my keepers. So for David Raya, the thinking behind him is, yes, he has Man City away in game week 5. It's not ideal, but firstly, I do think he could pick up a couple of save points in this game. And the main reason why he's in the draft here is because in game week 6, you want to be tripled up on Arsenal. Before the international break, looking at game week 6 for Arsenal, I did feel that we would want Gabriel, Saka, and Havertz. So that looked like the triple up to go for in game week 6 before the international break. But when I look at it now, because Havertz has dropped back slightly because of Odegaard's injury, Havertz is now in the midfield 3. So he's not kind of in the forward position that he was playing previously. And Trossard, Martinelli, and Saka was the front 3 that we saw against Spurs. So I do think like the appeal of Havertz comes down quite a bit, simply because I don't think he would consistently get the chances that we saw him get in the first 4 game weeks. So because of that, I've kind of shifted my thinking a bit into wanting 2 defensive Arsenal assets and Saka as the only attacking asset in game week 6. So with that in mind, David Raya here helps you to already have 1 defensive Arsenal asset. And then on the bench, you see first on the bench is Gabriel as well. Simply, he's there only because the Man City fixture. But from game week 6 onwards, you can be sure that Gabriel will be in the starting 11 for this team. So that's the thinking behind Raya. For Fabianski, the reason why I've gone for him here is because I do think the propensity for Areola to get injured is quite high. Looking at the kind of injury record that he's had, he has seen a couple of spells where he has extended amounts of rest because of injury. So I do think like Fabianski is the one with the best chance of getting a start. But obviously for the time being, Areola is still back fit, so we'll see what happens there. Anyway, you won't really be needing your 4.0 million keeper much. So Fabianski on the bench. Now, defenders-wise, I've gone with Robertson, Konza, Porro in the starting 11. And then I have Gabriel, as I've mentioned just now, and Vandenberg on the bench. So talking about the 3 in the starting 11 first, Robertson, as we saw just now, I still do think that Liverpool's fixtures are there for targeting. They really have only conceded 1 goal this season, and it's against Nottingham Forest. I do think like in that game, they were still quite unlucky to concede, and Liverpool still are a very solid defense in my eye. So I do think like from game week 5 onwards, you could continue to see the clean sheets. It could be a bit of a blip in game week 4, but I do think from game week 5 onwards, hopefully they bounce back. And Robertson's attacking numbers are pretty similar to Trent. So I do think like you're not losing out too much there. But obviously Trent is the more attacking one. But this allows you to save 1 million so that you can afford Salah in the draft and Haaland as well that you see. So Konza here, the main thinking behind this is that he has good fixtures overall. You saw Aston Villa quite high up the fixture ticker. And at 4.5, he's just quite a stable pick. I do like that. You know, he's a 90-minute man. He starts every single game. And Aston Villa's defense, even though they conceded 2 goals against Everton, I still rate them pretty highly. I just fear a little bit as to how Champions League would affect their kind of overall team dynamic. But I do think like Konza here for Wolves at home, it's a decent enough fixture, and foreseeable future if Aston Villa's defensive performances start to drop, you can always transfer him out. But I'm fine to start with Konza. Now I do think like Porro is still putting up very good numbers in terms of being very advanced, getting crosses in, taking a couple of set pieces here and there. And I do like the fact that for game week 5 onwards, we see Spurs quite high up the fixture ticker. So he would mainly be rotating with players on the bench. So specifically for game week 6, Porro is the one that drops down to the bench and Gabriel is the one that comes into the starting 11 because Porro has Manchester United. So he rotates quite well with Gabriel, and aside from that, further down the line, because this wildcard needs to last you quite a bit of time, he can also be rotated with Konza, for example, or Robertson when you drop him down, or transferred out for a player that rotates well with Porro as well. I just like the fact that we have a very attacking defender in Porro, and Halls could be coming for him soon, so I do want to have Porro here. Now in midfield, it's Rogers, Mbeumo, Smith Rowe, and Salah. Salah is the captain. So the main reason why I have Salah in the draft is mainly for captaincy in game week 5. From game week 6 onwards, he is actually the player that leaves the draft for Saka. But again, if you decide that you want to keep him for Wolves away in game week 6, it's not the worst thing in the world as well. So that's the thinking behind Salah. Definitely going to have him in the draft. For Mbeumo, who's the next most expensive player in the midfield, he is also someone that as a compromise, you need to start with him in game week 5 where he has Spurs away. But from game week 6 onwards, Brentford's fixtures are really good. So also a mainstay in a game week 5 wildcard. Now for Smith Rowe and for Rogers, they are enablers for the draft. Smith Rowe has been looking pretty decent and also getting a little bit better minutes overall. Progressively, they are increasing his load, so I like that. And I do think like Newcastle have shown themselves to be quite leaky. So game week 5 specifically is not a very difficult fixture for him. And in game week 6, he has Nottingham Forest as well. So I do think I look at Smith Rowe as an option. I just like the fact that, you know, how creative he is as a player and how integral he is to the attack at this point. I just want to have him in this draft. So Newcastle at home for him in game week 5. Now for Rogers here, Wolves at home, I know what people think about Rogers. He has been blanking the first 4 game weeks. And in game week 4 specifically, he had so many clear-cut chances, but he still missed them. I just kind of would pose the question back to you guys then. If you don't go for Rogers at that price point and you want to have Salah and Haaland in the draft, who would you have in this Rogers spot? Would you have, say for example, you could go up to 5.1 or 5.2. I can't see any other players that I would go for that gets 90 minutes in games and plays for a decent enough attacking team. So yes, he's been blanking, but I still think Rodgers is the one to go for, and you don't have to start him every single game week. He is, after all, 5 million. So later down the line, when you sell Robertson, for example, to a 4.5, you can use that money to upgrade Rodgers. You can also bench him in some games if he happens to still be in your team. And really, the Game Week 5 and Game Week 6 fixtures is Wolves at home and Ipswich away. So it's decent fixtures for him. So I would still choose to go for Rodgers here as the kind of very cheap enabler. Let me know in the comments down below who would you have in that position, because I have been struggling to look for good players, good cheap players to enable the draft to be expensive elsewhere. Now, up front, it's Watkins, Haaland, and Calvert-Lewin. So Haaland obviously has Arsenal at home. I do think I would still have Haaland because of what I said in the fixtures section just now, where from Game Week 6 onwards, I still think he scores quite a bit of points. So really, this Game Week 5 fixture is the only one I see him potentially blanking. And if I want him back from Game Week 6 onwards, why not just start with him already? So that's the thinking behind Haaland. For Watkins, as I've mentioned, the 2 block of fixtures, 5 and 6 for Aston Villa are really good. And Watkins is also a player that's starting to come back into form. And when I look at the kind of fixtures from Game Week 7 onwards, if you want to offload Rodgers, it's fine. But I think Watkins is someone you can keep for quite a while. looking at the way that, the positions that he takes up, the chances he gets is a lot better than Rodgers because simply he's playing the number 9 spot. So I think Watkins is a player that I would have on a Game Week 5 wild card. Not too much of a knee jerk. I do think like when I look at the form that he's had recently, even from game weeks 1 to game weeks 4, he was getting the chances, so it's more of a matter of converting them. So in game week 4 we saw him convert the chances, and I think moving forward, Aston Villa is still a very good attacking side that would create chances for Watkins. So I do think like I would have him on a game week 5 wild card. And the last one is Calvert-Lewin here. This one is definitely going to turn some heads, so hear me out on this one. I think he is very, very cheap, firstly. And I look at the fixtures for Everton, it's really good. We are expecting Calvert-Lewin to still be on penalties. He's got a double-digit haul in game week 3. And in game week 4, he also picked up a goal as well. A header from a set piece from McNeil. So the quality of deliveries from McNeil is pretty good, by the way. So I do think like the supply will be there for Calvert-Lewin. Fixtures are also there. He is also very cheap. So I still have him on the draft. But I know some people may not be too keen on this. So let me know what you think of Calvert-Lewin in the comments down below. Now, speaking about the bench players, so Fabianski, the backup keeper, the first option on the bench is Gabriel, also with the thinking that he comes into your starting 11 from game week 6, and then you do Salah to Saka in game week 6. That already gives you 3 Arsenal players in game week 6. Now for Winks, just a 4.5 million kind of bench fodder in the midfield section. And the last defender here is one I want to focus on a little bit. It's Vandenberg from Brentford. So as I did mention, from game week 6 onwards, you want a couple of Brentford assets. Now, I haven't gone for Flecken here, simply because I have Raya and Fabianski as my keepers. But I still want a bit of that Brentford defense that looked pretty decent. Even in the game against Man City, I think they limited them to quite a few chances. So I do think like Vandenberg, he's only 4 million by the way. He's been brought in for quite a fee, and I do think like the word we're hearing from Brentford fans as well as the kind of forums is that Vandenberg should be the starting defender for Brentford. So I do think like looking at his minutes from game week 5 onwards, we could start to see him getting consistent minutes. In game week 4 was when he got his first start, and again in game week 5, if we see that happening, I think it will be a trend moving forward, and he would be a very good 4.0 enabler to have on your game week 5 wildcard. So this will be a bit of a risk. If it doesn't work out, yes, it takes up a bit of your one Brentford slot, but Visser is still injured. So, when Visser comes back, you could very well get Visser for Calvert-Lewin, for example. There's still that third Brentford slot available, simply because you haven't gone for Flecken here. So, all eyes on Vandenberg, whether he starts in game week 5, but I take the risk here. He's just 4.0 million. If it doesn't work out, you leave him on your bench. So there we go with the game week 5 wildcard draft. Rambled on quite a bit. Hopefully this draft is kind of helpful for those on a Game Week 5 wildcard. Let me know what you guys think. Other players that you would consider that I don't have in this draft, drop it in the comments down below. If not, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please do drop a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. We are on the road to 9,000 subscribers. So if we can get there, it would be a dream. So if you haven't already and you're watching all this while, just help me to scroll down a little bit and hit the subscribe button. If not, I will catch you guys in more Game Week 5 content coming very soon. Bye bye.